What if I told you the world is full of inventions that once changed everything, then mysteriously vanished? Devices that promised to revolutionize the way we live, travel, and even communicate. Yet today, most people don't even know they existed. From underground transport systems that carried messages faster than email, to bizarre machines that looked like science fiction, these inventions weren't just forgotten. They were buried, abandoned, or deliberately erased. Why? Were they too ahead of their time, too dangerous, or simply inconvenient for the powers in control? Today, we're opening the dusty archives, peeling back the layers of history, and uncovering the strange, hidden lives of inventions the world tried to forget. 1. The pneumatic tube networks. The internet before the internet. London, 1890. A young clerk named Thomas stands in a bustling post office. Brass tubes snake across the ceiling, disappearing into walls like the arteries of some great mechanical beast. A woman approaches a counter, sliding a sealed envelope across. Thomas smiles, places it inside a metal capsule, and with a hiss of compressed air, whoosh, the message vanishes into the network. Minutes later, it reappears in a building across the city. Before fiber optic cables and instant messaging, cities like London, Paris, and New York were webbed together by pneumatic tube systems. These underground networks used air pressure to shoot capsules containing letters, money, and even small packages between buildings at speeds of 25 miles per hour. Stockbrokers used them to send trades. Banks used them to transfer cash safely. Hospitals sent urgent lab results without needing couriers. In 1897, New York's network stretched over 27 miles beneath the city. It connected post offices, department stores, and government buildings, all silently operating under the streets. Imagine living in that time. Your urgent letter to the mayor could arrive in under 10 minutes without a single horse or cart. But the tubes weren't flawless. Capsules could get stuck, delays happened, and maintenance was costly. By the mid-20th century, telephones and email rendered them obsolete. Today, only fragments of these networks survive, hidden behind walls in old buildings or sealed beneath modern streets. And yet, some live on in secret. In Prague, a few kilometers of pneumatic tube still operate quietly inside a hospital, carrying samples back and forth. In some banks, they still deliver documents, unnoticed by customers. The arteries of the old world still pump, if you know where to look. If you could send anything through a secret underground tube system today, what would it be? But while pneumatic tubes connected cities below the ground, another invention once connected them in the sky with the promise of luxury, speed, and a view like no other. 2. The great passenger airships, flying luxury hotels of the sky. The year is 1936. The sun rises over Frankfurt, Germany. Docked at its mooring mast is a silver giant, the LZ-129 Hindenburg. Crowds gather below, craning their necks to take in the sight. Nearly the length of 3 football fields, this floating colossus glimmers in the morning light. Passengers step aboard, greeted by stewards in crisp uniforms. Inside, it feels less like a machine and more like an ocean liner. Grand dining halls, smoking rooms, promenades with panoramic windows where the earth curves away in the distance. This was the golden dream of passenger airships. Unlike cramped airplanes of time, these behemoths offered space, elegance, and smooth travel. You could stroll on deck while crossing the Atlantic in under 3 days, faster than the fastest ocean liners. The Graf Zeppelin and its successors carried mail, cargo, and wealthy passengers across continents. Inside, the hum of engines was gentle and the view unmatched. But airships were not just a luxury. They were a promise, a vision of the skies where cities might one day be connected by fleets of floating hotels. Britain's R-101, America's USS Akron, and Germany's Zeppelin fleet were testaments to human ambition and engineering daring. Yet the dream came with risks. Filled with hydrogen instead of the safer helium, scarce at the time, they were floating tinder boxes. That risk became a nightmare on May 6, 1937, when the Hindenburg burst into flames over New Jersey in front of cameras and horrified spectators. 36 people perished, and the world's faith in passenger airships vanished almost overnight. Still, some whisper what could have been. In an alternate history, we might still see colossal silver shapes gliding silently overhead, offering voyages where the journey itself was a luxury. And with modern materials and helium, some engineers argue that the airship's second age might still come. Would you take a trip in a modern airship if they returned? Or is the risk too much? While the airship represented the height of travel luxury, another forgotten marvel brought the same level of innovation to something far less glamorous: mathematics itself. 3. The mechanical calculator, when math was a machine's job. Paris, 1892. Rain taps against the tall windows of a banker's office. Inside, a clerk sits at a polished mahogany desk, frowning at a column of numbers. His fingers hover over a strange contraption, a box of brass wheels, levers, and dials. With a turn of the crank, the gears begin to click and whir. The answer appears instantly on a row of little windows. No scratching of pencils, no erasing mistakes. The machine has done the work. Long before digital calculators or computers, mechanical calculators were the silent workhorses of business, government, and science. Some, like Blaise Pascal's 17th century Pascaline, could perform addition and subtraction. Later marvels, like the Curta calculator, could fit in the palm of your hand yet handle complex multiplication and division. In the industrial age, these devices became essential in banks, accounting firms, insurance companies, and engineering offices. For engineers designing bridges or accountants balancing ledgers, the mechanical calculator meant fewer errors and faster results. There were also marvels of craftsmanship. Gears cut with microscopic precision, each to the testament to the machinist's skill. When operated, they emitted a steady ticking sound, like a tiny heartbeat of logic. And yet, their reign was short. The rise of electronic calculators in the 1970s sent these beautiful machines into storage rooms and scrap heaps. Today, they sit in glass cases of museums or in the hands of collectors who appreciate their elegance. But there's a curious charm in imagining a world where offices still hum with the sound of turning cranks, where calculations felt tangible, as though numbers themselves had weight and motion. In a way, they remind us that even the most abstract ideas, like mathematics, once had a physical form. If you had one of these machines today, would you use it, or let it sit on a shelf as a piece of history? From numbers that clicked into place, we moved to ice that clinked in glasses, an invention that kept the world cool before electricity changed everything. For the icebox, keeping cool before refrigerators took over. Boston, 1885. A horse-drawn wagon rattles down a cobblestone street. Inside its wooden bed, massive blocks of ice glisten under a blanket of sawdust. The driver stops at a row of brick houses, hefting a block onto his shoulder with iron tongs. Behind the front door, a housewife opens a tall wooden cabinet lined with metal. She steps aside as the ice is lowered into place, the heartbeat of her kitchen for the next week. Before the hum of modern refrigerators, there was a silent, cold stillness of the icebox. These wooden cabinets, often lined with tin or zinc, kept milk fresh, butter firm, and meat from spoiling. Ice was harvested in winter from frozen lakes, then stored in vast insulated warehouses to last through summer. In cities, icemen made daily or weekly rounds, delivering to homes much like a milkman. It was more than convenience. In the 19th century, having an icebox meant safety. Food-borne illnesses dropped when perishables could be kept cold for days. In wealthier homes, the icebox became a point of pride, often ornately carved and polished, blending into fine dining rooms. But ice was heavy, melted quickly, and had to be replaced regularly. By the 1930s, mechanical refrigerators began replacing ice boxes in urban homes. Still, in rural America, ice boxes linger for decades, their simple design a testament to an era when cold was a luxury brought in by hand. Some families today still keep restored ice boxes, not just as antiques, but as a reminder of the rhythm of life before electricity, when staying cool meant planning ahead and relying on the labor of others. Could you live for a month using only an icebox, no refrigerator at all? While the icebox preserved food, another invention preserved something far more fleeting. Moving images, projected in darkened rooms before cinema was even born. 5. The magic lantern, cinema before the camera. Amsterdam, 1705. The room is lit only by flickering candles. A curious crowd leans forward as a man in a velvet coat adjusts a small wooden box with brass lens. Behind it, a candle flame glows brighter as he slides in a painted glass plate. Suddenly, the wall blooms with color. A ghostly image of a galloping horse, its hooves frozen mid-stride. Gasps fill the air. The magic lantern has worked its spell. Long before film reels and movie projectors, the magic lantern brought images to life. Invented in the 17th century, it used light. First candles, later oil lamps, and eventually electric bulbs to project hand-painted or photographic slides onto walls. Traveling showmen carried them from town to town, turning barns, taverns, and parlors into makeshift theaters. Some shows were educational, displaying maps, scientific diagrams, or portraits of faraway lands. Others were purely for wonder. Fairy tales, dramatic historical scenes, or in some cases, spooky ghost apparitions designed to make audiences shiver. In the Victorian era, phantasmagoria shows used smoke, moving slides, and eerie sound effect to conjure the dead, terrifying and delighting in equal measure. The magic lantern wasn't just entertainment. It was a social experience. Families gathered in parlors. Children leaned forward wide-eyed, and neighbors whispered about the impossible images dancing on the wall. It paved the way for cinema by proving that people would pay and gather for moving visuals. By the early 20th century, film projectors made the lantern obsolete, yet some still use restored magic lanterns today, keeping alive the wonder of a time when a beam of light could transform a room into another world. If you could step back in time to watch a magic lantern show, what kind of story would you want to see? From light dancing on walls, we now turn to voices traveling over miles of wire. When talking to someone far away meant turning a crank and waiting for a human to connect your call. 6. The hand crank telephone. Conversations in a wooden box. Rural Kansas, 1912. A woman in a long apron wipes her hands on her skirt and steps into the hallway. Mounted on the wall is a polished oak box with a black earpiece hanging on its side. She lifts the earpiece, places it to her ear, and with her free hand turns a small metal crank. Somewhere miles away, in a small switchboard office, a young operator hears a bell ring and plugs a cable into a socket. "Number, please," she asks politely. Moments later, the woman hears a familiar voice of her sister, 100 miles away. The hand crank telephone was a marvel of early communication, before direct dialing. Every call went through a human operator who physically connected circuits. The crank generated a small electrical current, sending a signal to the operator's board. From there, your voice could travel over poles, wires, and relays to someone in another town or even another state. These telephones were more than just devices. They were community lifelines. In small towns, operators often knew everyone by voice. They passed along urgent news, warned of storms, and sometimes acted as informal gossip hubs. For isolated farms, the wooden wall phone brought the world into the kitchen. But the system had limits. Lines could be busy, conversations overheard, and bad weather often knocked service out entirely. By the mid-20th century, rotary dial phones replaced crank systems, and the voice of the local operator faded into memory. Still, collectors and vintage enthusiasts keep these wooden telephones polished and working, a reminder of a time when connected with someone meant literally cranking up the conversation. Would you enjoy having a call through a human operator again, or would it drive you crazy? From voices carried on copper wires, we moved to machines that could move themselves, mechanical marvels that seem alive long before the word robot was ever invented. 7. The clockwork automata, the first robots of history. Geneva, 1774. A candlelit workshop smells faintly of oil and polished brass. On a table sits a small, lifelike boy made of wood and metal. His painted eyes seem to follow you as the clockmaker leans over, winding a key in his back. A faint ticking begins. Slowly, the boy's hand lifts a quill, dips it into ink, and, with delicate precision, begins to write a sentence on the paper before him. The words are neat, deliberate, and, to the astonishment of those watching, make perfect sense. Long before computers, clockwork automata amaze audiences with lifelike movements. These intricate machines, powered entirely by gears and springs, could write letters, draw pictures, play musical instruments, and even mimic human gestures. The most famous, like Pierre Jacquet-Dra's writing automaton or Vauquin's mechanical duck, toured Europe, drawing crowds who whispered about sorcery. For the wealthy, owning an automaton was a height of sophistication. These devices showcase both technical genius and artistic beauty. Car faces, silk costumes, and hidden mechanisms that move with uncanny smoothness. To audiences of the 18th and 19th centuries, they were glimpses into a future where machines might one day think and feel. But automata were fragile and incredibly expensive to produce. As industrialization shifted focus toward practical machines, their popularity faded. By the 20th century, many were dismantled or lost. The survivors now sit in museums, still capable of performing their centuries-old routines when carefully wound. In a way, they were the ancestors of modern robotics, proof that humans have long been fascinated with creating life from lifeless parts. And when you see one move today, there's still a moment where your mind forgets the mechanism and believes in the magic. If you could own a clockwork automaton, what skill or trick would you want it to perform? For machines that mimic life, we turn to one that promised to change travel forever. A train that floated on air and could have rewritten the history of rail. 8. The Vacuum Railway, a train that floated on air. Devon, England, 1848. The townspeople gather along the track, whispering in excitement. Before them lies not a steam-belching locomotive, but a sleek carriage with no visible engine. A whistle blows. The train begins to glide forward, fast, smooth, and strangely quiet. Beneath it runs a long pipe, sealed tight, except for the slot just under the train. Inside that pipe, a piston is being pulled forward by a vacuum created at the next station. The result? The world's first vacuum-powered railway. The South Devon Railway's atmospheric railway was a marvel of Victorian ambition. Instead of carrying its own heavy engine, the train used stationary pumping stations along the track to suck the air out of the pipe ahead, pulling the piston and the train forward. In theory, it was cleaner, quieter, and faster than steam locomotives. For a brief moment, it worked. Passengers marveled at the smooth ride, the lack of smoke, and the strange sense of being pulled by invisible forces. But in practice, the system had fatal flaws. The leather seals along the pipe, meant to keep the vacuum tight, were greased with tallow, which rats found delicious. The pests chewed through the seals, causing costly breakdowns. Weather also warped the leather, and maintenance became a nightmare. By 1848, the experiment was abandoned, the pumping stations shuttered. The dream of air-powered trains faded into history. Yet, the idea never fully died. Modern engineers still explore vacuum-based travel concepts. Most famously, Elon Musk proposed Hyperloop. Perhaps one day, trains will once again float silently on cushions of air, fulfilling the promise that Victorian engineers glimpsed for a fleeting moment. If the Hyperloop became real in your lifetime, would you try it or stick to traditional trains? These inventions, once the pride of their age, now lie scattered across history like forgotten stars, each one still capable of sparking wonder if we take the time to look up